Hey guys, welcome to the Youth Fitness Podcast. Topics on youth fitness with a focus on doing what's best for kids. Brought to you by the Martin family, the developers of the Brand X Method, and the Athlete Coach Network.
Youth need great coaches now more than ever. Brand X has dedicated themselves to doing what is best for kids for over 2 decades and now offers mentoring, education, programming, and resources in one smart package to empower coaches to efficiently deliver world-class youth programs. Check out their plug-and-play options and join the Brand X family today. You plus Brand X equals youth program success.
Hey guys, welcome back to another youth fitness podcast. I'm here with my dad. Today we're going to be talking about intensity and training with kids. So I think when we first kind of opened up this topic for discussion, we were interested in looking at, what's effective training versus what's ineffective training when it comes to intensity and kids as they train. And so there's a lot of things that we can dig into with that topic, when ineffective training, or what people would normally deem as ineffective training, when that actually becomes effective and when to put that into play, how much is too much at certain ages. And then again, the age ranges, what's kind of expected and what's effective for them. And then we also wanted to touch on, health versus competition, right? And the difference in intensity and what that should look like when it comes to training kids. So just kind of opening it up first, talking about effective training. What does effective training mean to you?
Well, it means that you're going to have a dose response, like that you have training and then the child should get better for whatever you're training for. Mm-hmm. And I think really people misunderstand working out and sweating versus actually training. Mm-hmm. Training is something where we have a desired outcome and you're doing something to produce that desired outcome. And when we opened this up, the discussion was people misunderstand that, well, if we get kids hot and sweaty, if we make them really working hard and they're out of breath for a long period of time, they're going to get better. Well, that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's a dose response. There's an appropriate amount of volume, because there's a few different ways that we can, push intensity up, right? Whether that's, hey, let's move faster than we're moving right now. Let's move more load than we're moving right now, or let's do more reps than we're doing right now. And when we talk about kids in training, I think it's extremely important, like you said, that the dose is correct, that we're going to get a positive response from the amount of intensity that we've applied. But I think there's the other side of the coin, right? Which is recovery, right? It's how much can we actually recover from? And that's where people get confused. They think it's like this never ending well of, hey, if I just do 5 more reps, I'm going to get 5 reps better. And that's not necessarily the case.
No. And I think that I think there's 2 things to really kind of delve into: recovery, as well as the effective dose response. Nobody would think that if you came in and said, well, I'm going to just add 50 pounds every time I come to the gym, I'm going to get better.
Right.
Because at some point,
you're not going to be able to do it.
You're not going to be able to lift that. Yeah. And that's a load that's ineffective. It's a load that's ineffective. And, so we have to address that. What are we trying to accomplish? And really what what the science tells us is that, if we put ourselves in a position that we've never been before, the body will respond to that. Mm-hmm. We have to decide what is appropriate to put the child under that they haven't done before, that they will get better. And then the other side of that is what you just said, the recovery.
Right, because of how much, right? I can't just have a kid start doing 5 miles a day if they've never ran before.
Right. So we bring that up, but then let's say they get to a place where they are at 5 miles, and what you were bringing up was they run that 5 miles, and then the next day you come out and you do 5 miles again. The next day you come out and you do 5 miles again, and they never recover.
Never recovering.
And then they never get better.
Yeah. So, and I think that's where the disconnect is here in the fitness industry right now. And especially when it comes to training kids is, we look at, there is a place in training for a glycolytic style, program. Like, sure. Hey, let's redline. Let's see how fast we can red line, and let's see how long we can keep it there. There's a place for that. It's a very specific place, in my opinion. It's reserved for people who are competitors or athletes. I very rarely think that has its place in a health training program, but there is a place for that. But I think the confusion is because that's what we see on Instagram, that's what we see on Facebook, that's what we see on YouTube, right? Is these very attractive short, videos of somebody going hard and fast for, an extended amount of time. And then it gets put up on a pedestal. Hey, look at this athlete, look at what they were able to accomplish. And then we're trying to mimic that in, various movements inside of the gym. And we're straying away from, proper movement patterns. We're straying away from, at the core, I think what does kids most harm is the mental aspect of that is like, it no longer becomes fun. Right.
Yeah.
They're not going to be having a good time if you say, hey, you need to go as hard as you possibly can to the point of vomiting every single day when you're inside of the gym. Like, that's not effective training.
And I think you've just unwrapped a ton of topics there. The first is looking at an adult model of fitness that has become popular and then trying to overlay that on youth. Mm-hmm. We know that's not effective, and it's not the best way to go about helping kids either become healthy or learn to enjoy fitness. I think that one of the reasons why we are so adamant that people need to understand the developmental stages of youth is that you can apply intensity appropriately to the children and help them within their developmental stages and help them succeed and get better. One of the reasons we took the clock away, from early on from the teen class, mm-hmm. was people were just doing what you said. They came in and they redlined, movement started to degrade, things started to happen that were outside of our goals.
Sure. So
what are our goals? The goals are help kids move better, mm-hmm. help them increase their physical literacy, and make them stronger. So if we're putting them in a position where the intensity is driving high skill movements to degrade, we're putting them in a position where we are
at
counterproductive to our goals.
Counterproductive. They're at risk. Right. Yep. Exactly.
And so I think it's important to understand that how do we apply intensity within a fitness class? Mm-hmm. Our model is one high skill movement, multiple low skill movement. Mm-hmm. So you can have burpees and shuttle run and squats, and you tell the kids, I want you to redline on the burpees, I want you to redline on the shuttle run, and I want you to come in before the squats.
Move slowly.
I want you to visualize, close your eyes, visualize your good squats, breathe a few times, open your eyes and perform those good squats, and then redline outside of those things. So we're putting the emphasis on the good movement, and we're putting ourselves in the intensity within things where that's appropriate for them to apply the intensity.
Right. And there's so many ways that we can do that. And even under load, there's ways to do that. Farmers carries, sled pulls, sled pushes, sure. Things that require very little skill to them, but can still be considered a difficult task, a significant amount of work. Right. So that's where we can apply that, redlining type of training, but we're going to avoid that in those high skill movements. Right. But again, if we do that style of training every single day, every time they're in the gym, it's not going to be recoverable. They're not going to be able to, see the result that they should be seeing from their program. And it's not going to be fun for them. Right. So we need to find the right mix. And I think, one of the topics I wanted to bring into this is, from the outside looking in, sometimes, especially when we were running our program, parents or adults would look at a child maybe showing up twice a week, doing some light stretching, maybe partaking in squats and deadlifts that week, but not doing any other training inside of the gym. And they would look at that from the outside looking in and think, well, that's not really effective training, right? But it's our job as coaches to understand where a child is in their cycle of training, in their seasons of sports, and to understand when it is appropriate to apply new stressors or different types of training to get the best dose response possible, right? Because if they're getting a dose response from something else, and then you have them come in on that same day or the day after and give them the exact same dose, again, it's not going to be effective. It's not going to be recoverable. So when does ineffective training actually become effective?
I think that you just described, the workout you just described is a great example of a kid in a season. So they're in baseball season. Well, they can come in a couple times a week and they can lift to maintain their strength, but maybe not get stronger, but maintain their strength. They can work on mobility. They can work on positional strength, things like that. But telling them you're going to go to your 5 days a week for your baseball practice, you're come in and have a heavy strength program, and you're going to do conditioning. It's going to be too much.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be able to recover. They're not going to play. And we have to remember that what we're trying to do is help that athlete be better for his sport, not to get better within our gym.
Exactly. Yeah. The goal is to boost their ability to go out and perform in their sport of choice, not inside of the four walls.
On the other side of that, I think when you're talking about health with kids and having kids learn to enjoy movement and to enjoy coming to the gym and working out, one of the things we used to emphasize with our coaches was that we coach movement, we don't cheerlead intensity. So we took the clock away, so kids would bring the intensity they were ready to give that day. And some of those kids were very intense and they would go 100%. But then maybe 2 days later they came in and they were tired and they went just the speed that they wanted to go.
Yep.
The other side of that is, as a good coach, you're looking at those kids and you're interviewing them as they come through the door. So when you find that they're tired, you're going to mention to them, hey, take it a little easy today.
Yeah. A lot of that comes with, again, knowing your athlete, right? Like knowing that they're in season, and when they walk through the door, asking them, hey, what have you done so far this week?
Right.
What day was your practice on? Did you lift that day, right? With your team? What did your conditioning with your team look like that day? Just to get a read on where they're at, how many sessions they've already had that week, maybe what they've already done and the dose that they've already received. Because, we have that baseball player come in and they've been throwing, as many pitches as possible for the past 3 days. Hey, let's do some stretches, right? Let's do some chest supported rows or some bent over rows. Let's help mitigate maybe some of these potential injuries that are starting to build up through your season. Let's kind of put hedge our bet against those, and let's skip out on some of the conditioning stuff, right? But again, from the outside looking in, that looks like ineffective, right?
What are you looking, for those coaches out there? We always had our mobility and warm up portion of the class. It was also a time to interview each of the kids, so we'd always have a minute of FaceTime, 30 seconds of FaceTime.
Yeah.
And you can ask, what do they have for breakfast? How do they feel? Anything going on in their life that you need to know about? All of those things can then inform how you approach their workout that day.
And the whole goal, we touched on effective dose, right? The whole goal, because we slightly mentioned the flip side, the whole goal is to make it recoverable, right? So when you look at effective training and the proper amount of intensity placed on a child, it all comes back to, how much is too much for them to recover from. And that's a question that we're constantly asking ourselves. That's a question that we were constantly, with the teens in our class, the kids in our class, constantly walking up to them, asking them how they felt, right? How do you feel today? What have you done this past week? Right? Seeing how much stress they've accumulated, how much intensity they've already put out that week was key for us to know how much to push them that class, or if they were even going to be partaking in most of the class. Right.
And I think also the interview process, that was a start point. We didn't do the interview process, then go 3, 2, 1, go. And they went and we were also using the time watching them, like, okay, he said he felt fine, but he's not moving the way I normally see him. So I'm going to go interview him, interrupt his workout, and slow him down as well. So I think the interview process can be used beforehand. It could be used during the workout as well. But also, speaking about recoverability, that interview process should be discussing with them what their sleep is like,
Right.
what their nutrition was
Diet was like,
like. Yeah, not just how much they did, so that we have some idea that when you really get to know somebody and you say, how was your sleep? And they go, I haven't really slept well for the last couple of nights. You know that they've been pushing too hard.
Yep.
So
yeah, their intensity's been too high. And when we talk about intensity, really we're talking about older kids and teens, right? We're talking about 10 and up, really, when they first start to be able to actually express intensity and utilize those energy systems. Because at the younger years, 3 to 5 years old, they walk through the door, it's almost impossible to overtrain them because they can't do certain things anyway.
I've never had a 5-year-old come into the gym going like, I'm really sore today.
I'm so drained.
Yeah, I'm so drained.
I'm so drained. And we're not asking those kids how they slept because
they slept like rocks.
Yeah, they slept like, everybody knows it. And even if they didn't, they're fine and they're ready to go for the next day. That's just how it works at that age, right? But once you get to around 10 years old, it's like, okay, now we can sprinkle in a little bit of intensity. They can actually start to express it. And so, that's when we start checking in and going, okay, what's the whole picture? How much is too much? What's effective training look like today for this specific kid? And
that's the time that, that 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old kids, those are the kids that you really do need to check in with. Because if they've been in your program, they move well, they can now start to really have intensity within their workouts, but they don't know how to manage it.
Yeah.
And, by the time they're 16, 17 years old, they're capable of understanding managing their intensity.
Yeah. And they'll manage it on their own. Right. Just, we all know how we feel after a poor night's sleep, after not eating correctly for the past week. It is self-regulating in a way, but it's something that we need to check in on, especially with those younger kids, because they still kind of have a mix of not really understanding where their bodies are at. So, and then the last thing I wanted to bring up was just, training for health versus the athletes, right? Because there are two opposite ends of the spectrum, in my opinion. And like I mentioned at the start, right? Like redlining, going as hard and as fast as we possibly can, seeing how long we can keep that red line there. That has its place for athletes, but does that have its place for health, for longevity?
You're asking me the question?
Yeah.
I don't, you see, I feel like it's very simple. Sport is sport. You put yourself at risk for sport. Every sport has risk. I don't know of anybody who played sport who go like, I'm hurt from this. I did this and did this.
Yeah.
Health is trying to make yourself better. It's for longevity. And so when we're training for health, and especially for kids, that there's ancillary topics that we need to address. Are they having fun? Are they walking away having made significant connections within the gym socially? Do they understand what they're doing and why they're doing it? An athlete has an understanding of why they're doing what they're doing.
You got a goal.
They have a goal. The goal is different with health. The goal for health is, like you said, it's longevity. It's being able to leave the gym and do whatever you want to do for the rest of your life.
Right.
The goal for someone who plays a sport is to play that sport at the highest level they possibly can.
Exactly.
And there's sacrifices to health for playing sport. That's why we see injuries to shoulders and elbows and knees in youth sports, because there are people pushing too hard and too far too fast.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think, when it comes to building a lifelong enjoyment of fitness and a pursuit of health, a pursuit of longevity, training looks different. Yeah. Right. And it looks almost not completely opposite, but it looks like a baby version of what we all see on YouTube, Instagram, right? Like those videos that get millions of views, they get those views because they're pushing intensity, they're pushing the boundaries. The same way when you see somebody at the Olympics do something that nobody's done before, those videos go viral, right? And they get a lot of attention, and that's cool. But we have to understand that we're at a point in the fitness industry where, those achievements physically are essentially our version of the Olympics. And we have to understand that when we're helping children gain longevity and try and maintain their health for the rest of their life, that training has to look differently than that. We don't always need to be pushing intensity, weight, speed. We need to focus on the things that are going to be important for later on in their life.
I think that you brought up a couple of really important points there. And one is that training is different. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we've seen is that high intensity workouts tend to be considered sport now. And there is the sport of fitness. But every sport will tell you that training for the sport is not doing the sport. And what we see happen often, which is detrimental to the health side of this equation, is people turning a teen class into every single class as a competition between the kids, versus a how well did you squat, and those kind of things.
We're all here to get better. In what way did we get better?
And that's really important to remember. What's really important to remember is you have a goal. Mm-hmm. The goal is either I'm competing, I'm doing a sport, or I'm getting better and training for health. Mm-hmm. And as long as we keep those things in mind, it does help you understand what the right dosage is for the kids, and keep an eye on their recoverability to be able to accomplish the goal that you've set out for them.
Yeah.
Or they've set out for themselves.
One of my favorite quotes is training is like moving dirt. Some days you have a shovel, some days you have a spoon, right? And I think that's totally appropriate when you look at not just like I apply that to my training. Some days I don't feel like going, and I know that I just need to move a little bit of dirt. Some days I have the spoon, some days I have a shovel, right? And you go in and you apply the proper intensity, and it's our job as coaches to regulate what that looks like when it comes to kids, because they can't regulate it themselves. So that was our Youth Fitness Podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed our discussion on intensity and effective training.
Welcome to the Athlete Coach Network, a new connection-based training platform that breaks down regional barriers and connects coaches and athletes anytime, anywhere. You're an athlete and love to push yourself. Who's guiding you? As an athlete, you can filter and search our library to find the perfect coach, or sign up for a membership to get video feedback and comments from our coaches all over the world. As a coach, you can set up your profile and advertise your credentials, set your own price for video reviews or direct messaging to ensure your rates reflects the value of your time. Welcome to the Athlete Coach Network, and welcome to the future of sports coaching.
That was the Youth Fitness Podcast, topics on youth fitness with a focus on doing what's best for kids. Brought to you by the Martin family, the developers of the Brand X Method and the Athlete Coach Network. We hope you guys enjoyed that episode and you listen for more.